Hello friend, welcome back to my channel. How are you today? I hope you're doing well. It's Tim here, and in this video, I will be guiding you through the steps to create this Impressionist-inspired landscape painting. I've gotten a lot of requests for a tutorial in this painting style, so I'm so excited to finally be able to share it with you. This is also a very beginner-friendly painting as well, so I hope you have fun along the way and enjoy this painting adventure. If you should recreate the painting and are on Instagram, I would absolutely love to see it, so please tag me at timstarstudio. Upcoming here are the hex codes for the palette of colors that you'll need. There are two different color palettes in this video. The first one is our main palette, and then the second one is the smaller palette for our person. I just found it was easier to break up all of the colors into two palettes rather than doing one big palette for this one. Here are the main brushes that we're going to be using in this video. They're all available in the Procreate default library, except for the palette knife brush and the damp brush. For both of these brushes though, I do have a video up on my channel on how to recreate these brushes from scratch, so if you need them, definitely go check them out. The first step of our tutorial will be to take a screenshot of this trace outline layer, paste it into a square size canvas on Procreate, then you're going to turn the opacity of it down and fit it to size, and then you'll trace over top of it in a new layer to create a guide for your painting to follow along with. Please feel free to take any breaks that you might need along the way, and when you're ready, let's begin. Alright, so let's turn our trace layer down. Let's go down to like 10%. Let's add a new layer, and let's put this layer underneath of the trace layer. And we're going to start painting the background first. So let's take the fifth color in the first row, and let's fill in the entire canvas with this color. And to create the background base layer of this painting, we're going to be doing something a little bit different today, and we're going to be painting with a lot of squiggles, so I'm super excited. Alright, so let's switch over to using the paintbrush now with the soft airbrush. Let's go to like 28% brush size with full opacity. Now we're going to use the fourth color in the first row, this shade of blue, and we're going to kind of scribble and create some loops across our painting just like this. Now using the fifth color in the second row, I'm going to paint a circle in the center of the painting just like this. And to get a perfect circle, you're going to paint a circle, and when you close the shape, you're going to hold it down, which will autocorrect it, and then you're going to tap the screen again while holding it down to create a perfect circle. And we're going to create some squiggles inside of that circle. Now using the sixth color in the second row, let's create another layer of squiggles inside of the circle. And now let's use Gaussian blur. And we're going to blur this layer to around 64%. Let's add a new layer. And now we're still going to use the paintbrush with the soft airbrush, but we're going to shrink the brush size down to around 20%. And we're going to use the fourth color in the second row. And here on the left side, upper top, we're going to create some more squiggles and work our way down and then across, just like this. Do about 3 rows of squiggles. Now using the second color in the third row, let's just put a couple of squiggles here and there just to create some brighter patches. And now using the first color in the third row, let's paint a heavy amount of squiggles right in the center, just like this. Now let's use Gaussian blur again, and let's blur this layer to around 45%. And I think I want one more layer of blue, so let's add a new layer. Let's draw some more squiggles just around the edges of the painting, just like this. Kind of creating a little U around the center. Now let's use the fifth color in the second row again. And let's just add some more little blue squiggles here and there. Now let's use Gaussian blur and blur this layer again to around 37%. Now yours may look a little bit different. Everybody's is going to kind of vary and differ just a little bit, and that's perfectly okay. I think it's kind of exciting to see how many different variations all of the different colors will make when they're blended together. Now let's lay down the base colors for our light post. Let's add a new layer. Now using the sixth color in the first row, the shade of purple, let's scribble some color over top of the lamppost, just like this. And now using Gaussian blur, let's blur this layer to around 30%. Let's add a new layer. Now using the first color in the second row, let's squiggle a smaller line of color in the middle there, just like that. And then using Gaussian blur again, let's blur that out. Let's add a new layer. Now using the second color in the second row, let's put some squiggle of color right around the bulb and just right on the edge of the lamp post here, just like this. And then using Gaussian blur again, let's blur that to around 23%. And actually, I'm going to turn this layer down just a little bit. It's a little too heavy, so it's about 74% or so. So let's add a new layer again. And let's use the fourth color in the third row, and let's put a little bit of this bright orange color just around the bulb, just like that. And then let's drag just a little bit down here. And then using Gaussian blur again, let's blur that to around 22%. And we're going to turn that layer's opacity down, about 72% again or so. Let's add another new layer. Using the third color in the third row, the shade of yellow, let's paint another squiggle, but we're only going to paint it right over top of the bulb. Now using Gaussian blur again, let's blur this layer to around 21%. Let's turn this layer down just a little bit. Let's turn it down to around 63% this time. And we're going to add another new layer. And using the same color again, I'm actually just going to fill in the circle of the lamp, just like that. And then using Gaussian blur, let's blur that to around 11%. And let's turn the opacity down to around 62% again. When you're happy with your layers, let's go ahead and collapse this. Let's add another new layer. And now we're going to paint the snow. All right, and I'm going to adjust my brush size just a little bit. Let's go down to like 15%. And we're going to use the sixth color in the sixth row, this grayed out shade of brown. And we're going to draw kind of a squiggle line to demarcate where the edge of the ground and the sky meet. And then I'm going to draw some squiggles to fill that in. Just like that. And now let's use Gaussian blur and blur this layer to around 36%. Let's add a new layer. Let's use the sixth color in the first row. And let's squiggle just over this area right here in the center. Now using Gaussian blur, let's blur that layer out to around 22%. Let's add a new layer. And using the first color in the second row. And actually, let's turn down the opacity of our brush. Let's go down to like 47%. And we're going to lightly put some of this color over that entire area again, just like that. Now using Gaussian blur, let's blur that layer to around 30%. Let's add another new layer. Now using the second color in the second row, let's scribble just a little bit of this color, only this scribble's going to be a little bit more directional. We're going to be kind of going this way with it. So let me undo that real quick. And we're going to start kind of here up at the edge. And we're going to kind of work our way over to the side, just like that. And now let's use Gaussian blur. And we're going to blur that layer to around 38%, not 33%. Let's add another new layer. Sorry, there's going to be a lot of layers in this tutorial. I feel like this is the easiest way to do it, though. I think you guys are going to be really surprised when we go to blend it out. Now, repeating what we did last time, we're going to kind of scribble going off to the left, just like this, in that direction. Doesn't need to be perfect. Now, using Gaussian blur, we're going to blur that out to around 28%, only I'm going to turn this layer down just a little bit. Let's turn it down to like 44%. Let's add another new layer. Now grabbing the third color in the third row, We're going to repeat that, only we're going to make it a little bit thinner, make it a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact, going to the left again, just like that. Let's use Gaussian blur. Blur that layer to around 31%. Now let's turn this down just a little bit. Let's turn it down to like 62%. All right, so we're going to collapse these onto that second layer. Don't collapse it on the back layer yet. So let's add another new layer. And let's use the second color in the first row, the shade of gray. And starting on the left-hand side here, we're going to just lightly scribble some snow color just in those areas around the middle here. And then we're going to repeat that on the right-hand side, just keeping it outside of the lines. And I included the lines here because when we go to blend it, it is going to blend over the lines. I just wanted to make sure we kept the rainbow colors in the middle. So let's use Gaussian blur and blur that out to around 31%. And I'm actually going to make a duplicate layer of this. Then let's merge the two snow layers back together. Let's add a new layer. Now let's use this first color in the first row, the brightest shade of white, and let's turn down the opacity of the brush down to around 38% or so, and let's turn the size down to around 10%. Starting on the left-hand side again, we're going to squiggle some more intensely compact squiggles than before, but we're still keeping it in the shape. And then repeating the same on the right-hand side within the trace outline layer. Let's use Gaussian blur and blur that out to around 19%. I'm actually going to turn this layer down just a little bit. Let's turn it down to around 65%. Now let's merge all of these layers down together, just like that. Now let's add some shadow and some highlight. Let's add a new layer. We're going to put it into soft light. Let's grab the third color in the first row and let's go full size. Let's do full size and full opacity. And we're going to draw a line starting from the top down to the bottom on the left-hand side edge. Let's repeat the same on the right side edge. And then let's repeat the same on the top. And let's curve the edges here. And you don't want to make this line too thick. So like if it's like this, that's a little too thick. You want to make it just a little thinner than that. And now using Gaussian blur, let's blur this layer to around 32%. Let's turn the opacity of this layer down quite a bit to like 17%. Let's add another new layer, and we're going to put this layer into overlay. Let's grab the first color in the first row, the shade of white, and we're going to paint a white circle in the center of the painting, but it doesn't have to be perfect, just like this. And then let's make the brush size just a little bit smaller. Let's go to like 40% and paint a yellow dot in the center of the lamp. Now using Gaussian blur again, let's blur this layer to around 48%. Which brings us to part 2, where we're going to start blending out our painting. Now in this section, we're actually going to be blending everything out we just painted, and we're going to be using mostly the palette knife brush for most of the process. I find it really helpful to blend across in rows to help keep our blending clean and to keep our painting organized, using a series of 2 repeating paint strokes over and over again. Both paint strokes are going to be going to the right, but one is slightly more up, and then the other is slightly turned more to the right, just like this. And then I wanted to show you how it looks after it's been blended out. I'm going in using those same 2 paint strokes, but using them sporadically across the painting to create kind of a palette knife-esque effect. This is one of my absolute favorite brushes to use, and I hope you guys will have fun painting with it. And I wanted to thank you so much, friend, for supporting the channel. I invite you to like, comment, and subscribe if you're enjoying the video so far. It really helps my channel out. This is probably my most favorite painting style to paint in as well, so I can't wait for this next part. Okay, once you have this down, let's turn our trace layer off and let's collapse all of our layers back together. Now, for this first layer of blending, we're going to start up here at the top right. And now let's switch over to the blending tool. And with the blending tool, we're going to use our palette knife brush. And let's go to like 20% brush size to start off with full opacity. And we're going to work in small patches of the painting at a time. So I'm going to work in rows as well, working my way from the left to the right. I don't know why that's easiest for me, but it kind of helps to keep the painting clean and organized. For this entire section, we'll be using our 2 short repeating paint strokes to the right, working our way across and down. You'll get some really beautiful color blends doing this too. And I'm going to work my way down, just repeating the same steps as before. About the time we hit the snow, we're going to stop here just like this, right at the edge. We're going to zoom back and we're going to move over to the next side and repeat the same. Working our way down to the snow, just like we did on the other side. And then once we hit this line, just like we did with the other side, we're going to kind of stop here because we're going to change our brush angle. So in this upcoming section, we're going to blend out the snow, and I'm going to use a technique I like to call the sad face highlight. And it's just a silly name for this curved paint stroke that goes sideways, back and forth, and the ends are kind of downturned, creating an arc shape that kind of looks like a sad face to me. I use this technique a lot to blend out smooth shapes and large areas a lot. So here, and let's start on the left-hand side, we're going to use kind of the sad face highlight, the back and forth paint stroke to start creating the impression of our grass. And every once in a while, you will kind of want to lift the brush up to let it break a little bit. Otherwise, you'll end up just kind of smearing it around just like that. So you'll want to just, you know, go back and forth, lift up, and then back and forth and lift up. And just know wherever you let the paint stroke go the longest at, that's where the most color will start being dragged at. And we're just creating some paint textures within that color. Let's move over just a little bit and repeat the same in the rainbow area. And then on the right-hand side as well. And we're just going to kind of smooth any of these little flicks from the brush out just a little bit. Okay, it's looking good. Once you're happy with your blending, let's add a new layer. And we're going to use soft light. We're going to switch to the paintbrush using the palette knife brush. And we're going to use a little bit of my confetti method. So basically the confetti method is just a bunch of small, short paint strokes randomly and chaotically placed together that kind of looks like a confetti explosion. I got a bunch of comments a while back when I would post time lapses of my art, wanting to know more about how to paint the confetti paintings, and I never really noticed or thought about it when I would do it, but I was like, that's really cute. But it actually ended up being really helpful because it ended up helping me figure out how to better break down this kind of painting. And let's go to like 6% brush size with the third color in the first row, the shade black. Starting at the right-hand side corner, we're going to start adding some small little dots just around the edges here. Let's move over and repeat the same. Don't worry if you get like a long one here or there, it's no big deal. We're going to zoom back here. I'm going to drag them down the left-hand side, reaching the snow, and then we're going to add a couple on the right-hand side. I'm going to put a couple in that area here with the lamp. Now let's put another layer of them going around the sides here, kind of working our way into the middle, but not quite as dense as we did around the edges. Let's move our way down onto the snow, and I'm going to put a little bit of this dark color. We're just going to scribble some around the left side edge and scribble some on the right side edge. We're going to turn this layer down just a little bit. Let's turn it down to around 43% or so, and let's add another new layer and put that layer into overlay. Let's grab the color white, which is the first color in the first row, and we're going to put some white dots sporadically and randomly around the center here, just like this. And I'm going to work my way back outwards, but we're not going to make them quite as dense around the sides here, just like this. We're going to work this out to the corners. See here, we're starting to get all of these color variations. You don't want to make them too heavy. Let's put a couple in there where the lamp is. Let's come down here. Let's turn the opacity of this brush down. Let's turn it to like 44%, and let's make it a little bit smaller. Let's go to like 2%. And let's add a scribble of lighter color right underneath of where the lamp is. Okay, we're going to turn this layer down. Let's turn the opacity of this layer down to around 49% or so. Let's add another new layer, and let's keep it in normal mode this time, but let's turn the opacity of the brush back up to 100%. Let's turn the brush size back to around 6%. Now, we're going to do a couple of random colors here and there. So let's use the fourth color in the second row. And let's just put a couple of random green right here on the right-hand side. Let's put some here on the left-hand side. Let's put some here in the middle. Some back here around the edges. And feel free to put as little or as much as you'd like. This is your world. Now let's use the second color in the third row. And right around where we put these same green dots at, we're going to put a couple of these brighter green dots. Let's grab the third color in the third row. And I'm going to put just a couple of these yellow dots just around the lamp post. Let's grab the second color in the second row, and I'm going to put just a couple of these red dots around the lamp post as well. Now let's turn the opacity of this layer down just a little bit. Let's turn it down to like 68%. Now let's create a copy canvas layer, and let's paste it back over the top here. Now we're going to go ahead and blend out all of our new colors with a smaller paintbrush size. Let's switch back over to the blending brush with the palette knife brush, and let's change our brush size to around 10%. And now, using the same paint strokes that we used from before, we're going to work our way in rows and start blending out all of our new colors. You will start getting a bunch of fun color blends here and there, so have fun with it. This is the best part of these paintings. Just continuing to blend and smooth out all of our colors, stopping right before we get to the snow again here. Let's move our way back over, and we're going to repeat the same thing going down again. Continuing to blend out in rows, it'll make it so much easier for you. And it's really just about being consistent about the blending patterns. That'll really get you a lot of fun color blends. Okay, once you get that all blended out, we're going to move back down to the snow. So let's add another new layer, and we're going to put that layer into overlay. Let's use the first color in the first row again, the color white. And using the soft airbrush with about 24% brush size with full opacity, let's squiggle another diagonal line of color starting from right here down to around the middle bottom edge. And we're going to keep that real thin, just like this. And let's put another circle of color here in the center of the painting. Doesn't need to be perfect, but right around there in the center. And let's use Gaussian blur and blur that out to around 27%. Let's turn this layer down a little bit. Let's turn it down to like 51%. And now that we've got this blended out, let's add some more color. Let's add another new layer and put it into overlay. And let's switch back over to using the flat palette knife brush again. Let's use about 5% brush size with full opacity. And let's use the third color in the third row again. We're going to put a couple of yellow confetti dots. They're just meant to add a little bit of detail highlighting here. Sorry, I was so far away. I figured, let's zoom up just a little bit. That might make it a little bit easier. And actually, let's put a couple of yellow dots right in some areas right around here, just to kind of help tie some of the colors of all of our painting together. And actually, if we put some of this yellow over in the purple, we'll get some pretty oranges and reds. It's just a very fun little effect that overlay can create here on Procreate. That's why I love digital painting so much. Let's put some down there, a little bit right here. Let's put it all over the place. Let's scribble just a little bit of this color right in there. Just like that. Let's put a little bit here in the snow. Just ever so lightly. And when you're happy with that, let's grab the second color in the third row. And let's just put a couple of detail highlight dots just around the painting's edges here, just ever so random. The more colors you have, the prettier the blend will be when you go to blend it out. Let's put a little bit in there, a little bit right there. I'm going to grab the sixth color in the third row, this ultra shade of violet. Let's just put just a little bit around the edges here. A little bit around the edges. Actually, let's put a little bit more right in there. I'm being a little crazy today. Let's drag a little bit around the sides here. just add a little bit of tone to the snow right here on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. Then I'm going to repeat that over here just like I did over here. Let's put a couple of these dots, this color, and put some dots here throughout the rest of the painting. This will add a lot of depth when we go to start blending it out again. And put a little bit of square dots in there. Let's put a couple in here too. In the whiter areas, it'll really make the brighter areas pop really nicely. So let's grab the first color in the first row again. And let's just put a couple of detail highlights right in the center. Let's put a couple right there where the lamp post is going to be. Let's grab a couple down here. And really just feel free to add them periodically throughout. Kind of helps to tie all of the colors together. I'm really excited about where this painting is going. Let's work a couple down here too. Let's bring that highlight down just a little bit. I'm gonna add just a little bit here underneath of the lamp post. Let's bring a little bit here into the rainbow section. Let's put a couple more up there. And really just keep going until you're happy with it. I'm liking the way this is looking, so I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. Let's do like 39% or so. Let's make another copy canvas of this layer and do paste. And we're going to start blending this out again. So let's switch back over to the blending tool with the blending brush. Let's do about 10% brush size with full opacity. And just like before, we're going to blend out all of our new colors. We're just going to kind of blend that edge up just a little bit to soften it. And we'll move on here to the snow in just a moment. But we're going to repeat the same thing in the middle, working our way downwards just like before. And once you're happy with your blending, let's blend out the snow. All right, so we're gonna come down here for the snow, and I'm actually gonna get rid of this for just a moment. So starting here on this, oops, let's switch over to the blending brush now. Make sure it's still on 10% with full opacity. And starting here on this left-hand side, we're gonna kind of work our way with scrubbing paint strokes back and forth. And the goal for this is not necessarily to keep it as smooth as it was. We want to create some texture in it. That way it kind of helps to blend the upper part of the painting in with the bottom now. Create some really pretty blends in there with that white and that yellow and orange and gold. And we're going to repeat that here in the center, just going back and forth, working our way down in rows again. And working our way over. And then finishing off using the same paint strokes here on the right hand side, working our way down, back and forth till we reach the bottom. Just helping to give that area a little bit more texture, just so it's not quite as like smooth. The only thing I think I want to add just a little bit of, let's go in, I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to grab the third color in the third row, again, that shade of yellow, and we're going to put just a little bit of that yellow here, right around this edge. And then I'm going to take and turn the opacity of this layer down. Let's turn it down to like 54%. Let's make another copy canvas layer and put it over the top. And in this new area that we just added, and I'm glad this happened too, so I can show you how to add it back in. We're just gonna repeat that same and kind of blend that new yellow in with our colors. And that just helps to brighten that spot up, because that'll be the brightest area where the light from the light post is hitting. Now that we've got the base of our painting created, let's paint the trees. And we're going to turn the trace outline layer back on. And actually, I'm going to turn the trace outline layer up a little bit. Let's go to like 21% or so. Let's come back down here. I'm going to make a copy of our copy canvas layer. Now, let's go into our paintbrush, and we're going to use the water pen here. And let's use the sixth color in the sixth row again, the shade of brown. And starting on the right-hand side here, let's go to like 5% brush size with full opacity. We're going to paint a line starting a little above the canvas line, dragging down. And then I'm going to create a second one to make it a little bit thicker. Just a little bit, and we're going to widen the base here at the bottom. Now starting right here, we're going to fill in that branch, connecting at the base. And to create realistic looking trees, you're going to want to create a bunch of Ys. So that's what branches tend to look like in nature. We're going to end one right there. It doesn't matter if it's completely perfect to the outline. And then let's finish one right there. I'm actually going to fill that in just a little bit and make it a little bit thicker. Perfect. Let's straighten that edge up here. And let's move on to the next tree. So let's start on this left side tree, starting from the top to the bottom again, ending about right there. Let's paint a second line, filling that in here, make that a little bit wider. Got a little carried away there at the bottom. So if that happens, feel free to erase. Let's redraw that second line again. There we go. Okay, we're going to add branch, and then the next branch. And that brings us to the last tree. So let's up our brush size a little bit. Let's go to like 7%, starting from the top to the bottom again. Then this last tree. fill that in just a little bit here at the bottom, making that just a little bit wider. Then I'm going to add the last branch here. And for this one, I'm actually going to let's grab the third color in the first row, the shade of black, and let's add another line of color here just on the left side of this tree, just like that, to make that a little bit darker. I'm going to turn our trace outline layer off for just a minute. Let's grab the blending tool and let's switch over to the water pen with the blending tool. Starting from the top to the bottom again with the blending tool, let's do like 7% brush size with full opacity. I'm just going to kind of blend over top of this line, and it'll just help our trees kind of blend in with the colors in the background just a little bit. And if you go up and down on this, you can kind of get some nice color blends there on the tree trunk. Let's repeat the same on the tree branch, this tree branch, and then that one, ending right there in the center. And anywhere that it crosses over like that, you can kind of just go in and smooth that over just a little bit. Kind of just helps our textures match. So we're going to repeat the same on this tree right here. I'm going to drag some of this undercolor up just a little bit. Let's repeat this on the branch. Then on this branch. And just kind of smooth that over. And then on this last one, since we added the black, I'm going to be a little bit heavier handed. And if you need to, just go up and down a little bit to grab the color. There we go. Kind of just soften that up a little bit. Just creates a nice little shadow on the left side of the tree. Gonna drag it on here. I'm gonna drag some of the snow color up just to kind of help it blend just a little bit better. Let's finish it off with this branch here, just like that. Perfect. Let's switch back over to using the palette knife brush, still with 10%, and we're just going to kind of blend upwards just a little bit at the bases of our trees, just to kind of get them to match a little bit better. And then you can kind of go sideways just a little bit on each one of them. And when you're happy with your trees, it's time to paint the light post. Now let's go over here to the light post. Let's add a new layer and turn the trace outline layer back on. I'm going to switch over to our paintbrush again with the water pen. Let's do like 4% brush size with full opacity. Let's grab the fourth color in the sixth row. Let's paint a straight line down here, just like this. And let's fill in this shape here. And then for our light post, let's grab the second color in the first row and paint a circle and fill it in just like this. And actually, I'm going to grab the fourth color in the sixth row again and create a little post holder, the light holder right there. Let's widen this out just a little bit. Let's grab the second color in the first row and paint a little highlight on top and drag that down the side. Let's turn our trace outline layer off. Now using the blending tool again, and let's switch back to the water pen. Let's do like 5% brush size with full opacity. Let's go back and forth and blend this new highlight onto the side of the lamp post, just like this. Just going back up and down, it'll help blend it together. We're going to blend that in with the base here. And I'm going to drag some of this color onto the lamp post itself, ending about right there. And then to add a cool little shadow onto the light post itself, let's add another new layer. Let's put it into soft light. Let's use the third color in the first row again, the color black, and let's paint a C shape on the left side of the lamp. And now I think we're going to blend it out a little bit. Let's make another copy canvas layer and paste it over the top. Let's switch back over to the palette knife brush again, still the same settings. Let's just go and round those areas off, just following the shape. And that'll help our light post blend in with the background. And we're gonna follow it up on that side just a little bit. And then here at the base, we're just gonna kind of drag that up just like I did with the trees, just to help it blend a little bit better. And then flatten it off there at the bottom. And when you're happy with your light post, we're going to go ahead and paint our person. And in this section, you will need to switch over to palette 2 for the colors. All right, so we're gonna turn our trace layer back on and turn it back up. Let's go to like 52%. All right, let's switch over to using the technical pen with the paintbrush. Let's use about 14–15% brush size with full opacity. Let's add a new layer and put it on top of the trace outline. Now using the second color in the second row, let's outline the pants. And then fill it in. Now using the first color in the first row, let's outline the top part of the coat and the mittens, just like this. Adding there at the top part here. And then let's use color drop and fill it in. Let's move up here. Let's outline the hat. And then go underneath the pom-pom and then fill it in. Let's grab the fifth color in the first row, this dark shade of red. And now let's fill in the entire scarf. And then fill it in. And then using the first color in the second row, let's outline the pom-pom. And then fill it in. We're going to move this layer underneath of the trace outline layer so we can see it a little bit easier. Let's switch over to using the damp brush now with the paintbrush. Let's do like 1% brush size with about 60% opacity. Now using the second color in the first row, let's put some color here on top of the hat. Let's put some on the brim of the hat. We're going to work our way down here. Let's put some on the coat. Just using back and forth scribble paint strokes. And actually, let's up our brush size just a little bit. Let's go to 2%. Make it a little bit easier for us. Just using back and forth, up and down paint strokes to put a little bit of color on top of the coat. Let's put some on the hood area. Next, using the fifth color in the first row, the shade of red, let's fill in the red of the mittens. Just putting a little bit of color over the brown on both sides. And then using the sixth color in the first row, let's put a little bit of this lighter color on top of the upper part of the scarf. Just back and forth here, just adding a little bit of highlight. And let's put a little bit of this highlight red on the mittens. Okay, let's add a new layer. Using the third color in the first row, let's put a little bit of this highlight color on top of the hood. Just like this, allowing a little bit of that undercolor still to show through. Let's put a little bit on the edge of the hood here. And now I'm going to actually put just a little bit of this highlight color on the right side of the body and drag it over to right around the middle area. And I'm not really lifting my brush here just so the color fades off a little bit. Let's bring it down the arm. And back down here. I'm going to turn this layer's opacity down just a little bit. Let's turn it down to like 60%. Let's add a new layer. And we're going to add just a little bit more of the same colored highlight on the right side of the body here. And then let's put a little bit more on the hood. Just kind of focusing it more on the right side of the hood here. And then just filling that in. Just like that. I'm going to turn this layer's opacity down just a little bit. Let's turn it down to around 79%. Let's merge these 3 layers together. So still using the third color in the first row. Let's shrink our brush size. Still around 2%. Let's add just a little bit of color on the top part of the hat here. Let's add just a little bit more around the side. Just brightening that up. Now I'm going to grab the fourth color in the first row. And we're going to basically repeat that same, just adding a little bit more highlight on the right side edge of the body, but even more sparingly than before. And then a little on the hood. And you know what? I'm going to be a little crazy here. We're actually going to change the color of the lining of the coat here to red as well. So let's grab the fifth color in the first row. And let's fill in this with some red. Almost forgot about that. And then let's grab the sixth color in the first row and put just a little bit of this red over the top, just using back and forth scribble paint strokes. Okay, let's add another new layer. Let's use the first color in the first row again and put just a little bit of this highlight color on top of the legs. Just like that. Now let's take this layer's opacity and turn it down just a little bit to like 79%. Let's merge this layer down. I'm going to turn our trace layer off for just a moment. Let's add a new layer and put that layer into soft light. Let's use the second color in the second row, and we're going to add a little bit of low light to the left side of the arm and the left side of the body, just like this, just using loose back and forth, up and down paint strokes. I'm going to work a little bit of that right into the middle here. Oops, not that much. Let's add just a little bit to the hood. Just outline the hood just a little bit, and I'm actually going to add another line just reinforcing the hood just a little bit. Let's put a little bit of shadow over here on the scarf. A little bit of shadow on this part of the hat. Let's put a little on the pom-pom. Let's put a little bit down here and on the left side of the leg. And when you're happy with your shadow, let's turn it down to like 81%. Let's merge these 2 layers together. Now I'm going to create a copy of this layer. Let's switch to the blending tool now, and we're going to switch over to the palette knife brush. And we're going to do this as a test here real quick. Let's go down to like 5% brush size, still with full opacity. And I'm going to test this here in the center just to see how strong the effect is. Okay. So I'm putting a little bit of texture here, just going up and down in short paint strokes. And I'm actually going to turn this layer's opacity down just a little bit. So that way we can still kind of see the underlayer, but we're still getting the texture that we're putting on top of it. It's a really clever way to integrate those 2 textures together. That way it blends better with the background. So let's switch back over to the blending tool. And I'm basically going to repeat the same process over the entirety of our person. Just adding little bouts of texture here and there, going different directions. And have fun with it. You can really create some fun textures with this, but still have kind of a safeguard underneath with our original painted layer. And that's a really easy way to keep defined details in this style, because it is really easy to kind of let them get away from you. We're still keeping that integrity underneath, which I really like. Just alternating what paint direction I'm going, mostly just following the lines of the person. Kind of just being careful around the edges. Now we're following this on a horizontal line. Now let's blend this over top of the legs just a little bit. Quickly here, fixing the blend of that sleeve that was driving me crazy. Once you're happy with your blending, I'm actually going to create a copy of the original person layer, so not the one with the texture on it. So let's create a duplicate layer of it, and we're going to work with the layer that's underneath of it. Let's flip it vertically and put it underneath. Then we're going to turn it just a little bit, just to make sure it's casting a nice shadow for us. Let's turn this layer into, let's put it into a soft light. And I'm actually going to use hue and saturation, and we're going to turn it all the way down using the brightness tool. And then let's turn the opacity of this layer down just a little bit, around 76% or so. I think that's looking pretty good. I'm very excited about this. It's the little things. Let's add a new layer. And let's put it into soft light, which brings us to adding the finishing details to our painting. Now using the paintbrush, let's use soft airbrush, go to around 53% with about 70% opacity, and let's switch back over to the original palette. Let's use the 5th color in the first row, and let's create another vignette just around this left side edge and drag it down. And you'll want to make sure that it's a thin line going all the way over here into the snow. And then we'll create a little curve here at the bottom. And then we're going to repeat this on the right hand side. Only don't drag it over where the light is, and then just kind of bring it back in like that. Let's use Gaussian blur and blur that edge out. And let's blur it to around 39%. Let's turn this layer's opacity down just a little bit. Let's go to like 37%. I'm going to create another copy canvas layer and just make sure your trace outline layer is off. So we're going to put that back over the top. Let's create a duplicate of this layer, so there's going to be 2 of them. Let's put the top layer into black and white. Let's add a new layer and put this layer into overlay. Let's switch over to using the paintbrush now with the palette knife brush. Let's use like 5% brush size with full opacity. Using the first color in the first row. Let's put a couple of small detail confetti strokes here around the center. Kind of zooming back up there, not making them too crazy. Let's put a couple over here on the right hand side. A couple around the lamp post. Let's put a couple up here. Let's put a couple over here in that new area of vignette we just put down. Put some over here. Let's put a couple in this area too, just to kind of break that up just a little bit. Actually, let's put a couple right there. I'm never done. Like it's always a work in progress. Let's add just a little bit of highlight just down here. And I'm just putting a couple little dots just to kind of brighten this up. And here on the path, I'm adding some of these detail paint strokes in the same direction that the light is being cast from the lamppost. Just adding just minimal amounts of detail here and there. And then when you're happy with your dots, let's turn the black and white layer off. Now let's turn this layer down quite a bit. Let's turn it down to around 45% or so. Let's create another copy canvas layer and paste over the top. Let's switch back over to the blending tool now with the palette knife brush. And let's go to like 10% brush size with full opacity. And let's blend out just our detail highlights we just added. You don't need to reblend out anything else, but still using the same paint strokes that we used from before. And across here with the blending of these new highlight areas, I'm only blending the highlights. I'm not reblending any of the old background areas, only the new stuff. I feel like it's here too, where blending out all of these new highlights really brings our painting to life too. This is my favorite part. Okay, we're going to come down here and start smoothing in and blending out our new details in our path. And we're just using back and forth scribble paint strokes, not being too precious with it because we do want a little bit of texture, but we don't want to completely destroy our path. So you'll want to be really careful, and I do find it's easier just to work down in rows just to keep it clean. And I'm not kind of going over the shadowed area, so this area right here, not going over that area. And then repeating that over here. Just adjusting anything else that looks a little rough. And now following the shape of the light post, we're going to add just a little bit of texture, just to give it a little bit more flair, a little more pizzazz. If you give it a little bit more, too much pizzazz, like I just did, let's go back in with the water pen and color grab that color here and just kind of re-outline that edge just a little bit, because I kind of lost it. So I'm glad that happened. And just in case that happens to you, you'll know how to fix it. Let's go in. One of the last things I want to do, let's add a new layer, put that layer into overlay. Let's grab the first color in the first row. Let's grab, using the paintbrush now with the soft airbrush, about 80% brush size with full opacity. Let's paint a little circle here of light right in the center of the painting. Let's put a little center on the light. Now using Gaussian blur, let's blur that layer out. Let's blur it to around 64%. Let's turn this layer's opacity down a little bit. Let's turn it down to around 59%. Let's create another copy canvas and paste it over the top. Let's use the hue and saturation tool. And let's up the saturation of the painting just a little bit. Let's go to like 59%. You can really see what a big difference that makes. Now I'm going to create a copy of this layer and we're going to use sharpen. Let's sharpen to around 43% or so, and we're done. Now let's sign our painting. Thank you so much for watching, friend. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Impressionism inspires me so much and is actually what first got me into painting when I was younger, so I'm super excited to share more with you in this style. If you like this video and want to see more content like this, I invite you to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps my channel out. Let me know below too what your favorite part of the painting was and what you thought of the paintbrush. I have a bunch of other tutorials now up on my channel too, so definitely go check those out if you want to continue painting. And until next time, friend, happy painting.